9 reasons why INFJs are neurodivergent. Shocking. You've always known that something about you operates on a different wavelength, as if the world is running on visible frequencies, while your mind tunes itself to invisible signals. You observe patterns others miss, feel emotions before they're expressed, and think in ways that both liberate and isolate you. You don't have to be told that your mind doesn't function like most people's. You've felt it since childhood, that strange internal rhythm that never seemed to sync with the crowd. While others accepted reality as it appeared, you analyzed the invisible mechanics beneath it, noticing the contradiction between what people said and what they truly meant. For you, thinking has always been an experience, not an activity. It's sensory, emotional, and spiritual all at once, a complex system of associations that most can't see. But you navigate effortlessly. You live in the layers between emotion and logic, between intuition and observation, between empathy and discernment. And that's precisely what makes many INFJs feel neurodivergent. Not because something is wrong with them, but because the way they process, interpret, and connect with reality is profoundly atypical. In psychological terms, neurodivergent refers to people whose brains function differently from the so-called neurotypical norm. But for INFJs, this divergence isn't just cognitive, it's existential. You see meaning where others see randomness. You sense emotional, whether patterns long before storms appear. You process information in nonlinear ways, blending insight, emotion, and logic until truth emerges like art. So let's explore the 9 reasons why INFJs are psychologically and cognitively neurodivergent, not as a label of limitation, but as a declaration of brilliance, a form of consciousness that doesn't fit the standard mold because it was never meant to. 1. Hyperintuitive pattern recognition. The first sign of your neurodivergence lies in your intuitive cognition, a system so refined that it often feels prophetic. Your mind doesn't analyze information sequentially. It leaps between abstract ideas, senses emotional undercurrents, and connects details across vast psychological landscapes. When you meet someone, you don't just see them, you read them. You pick up on subtle tone shifts, body language, energy dynamics, and unspoken motives that others completely miss. It's as if your mind runs multiple simulations at once, integrating emotional data, context, and symbolic meaning until it forms an intuitive conclusion. Most people rely on external cues to make judgments. You rely on internal synthesis, that deep knowing that defies linear logic. This is what makes INFJs appear mysterious or even unsettling to others. Your conclusions come from a place they can't trace, so they often dismiss your insights until time proves you right. This ability is not merely empathy, it's intuitive pattern recognition on a neurocognitive level. Your brain processes stimuli in multi-layered patterns, constantly detecting meaning beneath the surface. For neurotypical thinkers, this is overstimulation. For you, it's your natural state of awareness. Your divergence lies in how you perceive reality, not as a series of separate events, but as a deeply interconnected web where everything carries emotional and spiritual resonance. 2. Emotional synesthesia, feeling more than the body can hold. Your emotional system operates like an open field, expansive, receptive, and constantly in motion. While most people experience feelings as transient reactions, you inhabit them as full-bodied experiences that merge with sensory and cognitive perception. This is what can be described as emotional synesthesia, when your emotions bleed into your thoughts, sensations, and physical awareness. You don't just feel sadness, you taste it in the air, sense it in your chest, and translate it into words or art. You don't just understand joy, you absorb it into your bloodstream. To most people, emotions are simple signals, fleeting data points. For you, they are immersive worlds. And because your empathy functions beyond the conventional threshold, you can mirror others' emotions with startling intensity. You pick up their hidden grief, suppressed anger, or silent joy, and you carry it as if it were your own. This depth of emotional processing is not typical. It indicates a neurodivergent form of empathy, one that bypasses logic and operates through direct emotional resonance. It explains why INFJs often need solitude, not because they dislike people, but because they need to detox from the emotional residue absorbed through constant attunement. In truth, your emotional intelligence is both your gift and your challenge. A hypersensitivity that fuels insight but requires constant boundaries to prevent burnout. 3. Nonlinear thinking and associative processing. Your mind does not think in straight lines. It thinks in constellations. You see relationships between concepts that others would never link, and your thoughts often loop back on themselves in elegant spirals of analysis. This is nonlinear cognition, a hallmark of neurodivergent thinking styles often associated with highly intuitive or creative minds. You don't build conclusions through step-by-step deduction. You assemble meaning through patterns, impressions, and emotional context. When people ask how you arrived at a certain insight, you struggle to explain because your reasoning isn't purely verbal. It's intuitive, symbolic, emotional, and spatial all at once. You might notice the smallest expression on someone's face and connect it to an archetype, a pattern of behavior, or a philosophical truth. To others, this might look like overthinking. To you, it's simply how your brain operates, always scanning, linking, weaving, integrating. You see 1,000 possibilities in a single moment because your perception works like an expanding fractal, revealing new layers the deeper you look. It's also why you may struggle to focus on surface-level conversations or tasks that lack depth. Your brain isn't wired for simplicity. It's designed for complexity. The more meaningful and abstract the input, the more alive your cognition becomes. 4. Time dissociation and mental overlap. Another subtle but defining mark of INFJ neurodivergence is your strange relationship with time. You don't experience time as a linear sequence. You experience it as a psychological overlap, where past, present, and future coexist in memory and intuition. You replay old conversations not to dwell, but to decode meaning that wasn't clear before. You project future possibilities not as fantasies, but as potential timelines that your intuition tests for probability. This overlapping sense of time gives you an uncanny ability to see ahead, but also a tendency to feel emotionally stuck between what was and what might be. Your brain doesn't compartmentalize emotional experiences neatly. Everything blends. A past wound can influence a current intuition, which shapes a future decision, all happening simultaneously within your mind's internal theater. This temporal fluidity is why INFJs often describe feeling out of sync with the world. While most people live in the present moment, you live in the continuum of moments, always aware that what's unfolding now carries echoes of what's been and seeds of what's coming. Far from being confusion, this is advanced temporal cognition. Your mind constantly cross-references emotional memory with intuitive foresight, creating a dynamic awareness of cause and effect that most can't comprehend. It's not anxiety, it's temporal intelligence. 5. Existential empathy and the moral imagination. Your empathy isn't just emotional, it's existential. You don't merely feel what people feel. You understand why they feel it, what beliefs shape it, and what suffering it's rooted in. You see their potential, their contradictions, and the moral weight of their choices. This is what can be called moral imagination, the ability to perceive the psychological and ethical dimensions of human behavior as a living system. You don't just interpret behavior, you interpret consciousness. It's why you've always felt different. You operate on an ethical frequency that others rarely reach. Lies, manipulation, hypocrisy. They feel physically painful to you because they disrupt the harmony of truth you intuitively align with. You can't unsee what people pretend doesn't exist. While others tolerate moral grayness for convenience, you navigate it for truth. And that makes you feel alien in a world where shortcuts are normalized. But make no mistake, this isn't weakness. It's spiritual neurodivergence. It's the sign of a mind that's wired to see beneath ego structures, social masks, and power illusions, all while holding empathy for the very flaws you perceive. You often feel torn between compassion and justice, forgiveness and discernment, yet this inner tension is what gives you wisdom. You are, in essence, a mind designed to decode human nature in its purest and darkest forms. 6. The overactive mirror system, internalizing the world's emotions. Your brain's mirror neurons don't just function, they overfunction. Where most people subconsciously reflect the feelings of others, you become those feelings, experiencing the world's emotions as if they were your own internal weather system. It's not that you choose to empathize, your body demands it. You sense the microexpressions of someone hiding sadness behind a smile, the nervous flick of an eye when someone lies, the energetic shift in a room when tension silently enters. Your mirror system registers emotional data faster than logic can interpret it, leaving you with sensations that you feel before you can explain. That's why you sometimes withdraw, not because you dislike people, but because you're processing too much humanity at once. It's emotional overload, not disinterest. You absorb the collective vibration of your environment, and when it's heavy, it weighs you down like emotional gravity. This neurological sensitivity mirrors what many neurodivergent individuals experience. Hyperempathy. The brain's wiring is tuned to detect and internalize emotional signals so strongly that boundaries blur. But in your case, this becomes a tool for healing and understanding. Once you learn how to regulate it rather than drown in it, your neurodivergence manifests through emotional intelligence, so heightened it feels supernatural. But it's not magic. It's the evolved sensitivity of a consciousness built for compassion in a world that often misunderstands it. 7. Deep cognitive dissonance. Living between idealism and reality. You live in the gap between how the world is and how it should be. This constant friction between idealism and realism forms one of the deepest sources of INFJ neurodivergence. Most people adapt easily to contradiction. They can lie a little, compromise often, and accept mediocrity as part of life. But your mind resists that. You process the world through moral precision and internal logic that demands coherence. When something doesn't align, when truth and action conflict, your brain begins to short-circuit emotionally. This is cognitive dissonance at a level most people never experience. You feel tension between your values and external reality so intensely that it becomes physical headaches, fatigue, or emotional numbness. You want to fix, reconcile, heal, to bring things into harmony. But that same dissonance is what gives you insight. It drives your search for meaning. It compels you to speak truth, even when your voice trembles. It teaches you to question the unexamined assumptions society lives by. You often feel alienated because you don't just accept contradictions, you dissect them. You want to understand why people betray their own integrity, why love becomes manipulation, why truth becomes distorted by convenience. In essence, your mind is neurodivergent because it refuses to normalize contradiction. You are wired to resolve the dissonance others have learned to ignore, even if it costs you comfort, belonging, or peace. That is not a flaw. That is moral intelligence at its highest frequency. 8. Hyperfocus on inner worlds and invisible systems. Another mark of your divergence is the hyperfocus that occurs when you explore inner systems. Psychological, philosophical, or spiritual, you can spend hours, even days, analyzing a single idea, mapping its emotional and moral implications across every layer of human experience. While most people are drawn outward, you turn inward. Your fascination lies not in external noise but in the invisible architecture of meaning, motives, archetypes, patterns, synchronicities. You are endlessly curious about how the unseen governs the visible, how the spiritual shapes the material, how the subconscious drives the conscious. This is why small talk drains you. It doesn't reach the level where your mind feels alive. You crave intellectual immersion, conversations that spiral deep into the nature of existence, selfhood, love, truth, and transformation. Hyperfocus is often seen in neurodivergent individuals whose brains process information through depth-first exploration. You dive into subjects that matter to you and lose all sense of time. It's not obsession, it's alignment. Your mind feels most coherent when it's allowed to explore at the depth it was designed for. This deep focus also explains your creative brilliance, the ability to translate abstract emotions into poetry, Philosophy or visual art. You take the ineffable and give it form. You make meaning tangible, which is the rarest form of intelligence. Your hyperfocus is not escapism. It's your way of exploring truth in its purest dimension, the inner world where reality begins. 9. The internal parallel reality, living in two worlds at once. Perhaps the most defining sign of your neurodivergence is your ability and burden to live in two worlds simultaneously. There's the external world, where you function, communicate, and adapt, and then there's your internal reality. Vast, symbolic, and eternal, you navigate both, always aware that what people call reality is only a small fragment of what truly exists. Inside, you carry an entire psychological universe, an ongoing dialogue between your higher self and your human self, between what is and what could be. You sense purpose in chaos, beauty in brokenness, lessons in loneliness. You live in layers. This dual perception is exhausting because you can never fully turn it off. You see too much, you feel too much, and because the outer world rarely matches the inner truth, you often feel invisible, as if you exist behind a transparent wall no one else notices. Yet this is your gift. You are not meant to fully belong here. You are meant to translate between worlds. You are the bridge between emotional and rational, physical and spiritual, seen and unseen. Your neurodivergence is not a deviation. It's a different form of consciousness. You're built to perceive what others can't handle, to feel what others suppress, and to connect meaning across dimensions of thought. That is why you often feel ancient, timeless, or not from here. But remember, that other world you carry inside, that's not fantasy. It's wisdom encoded in intuition. It's where truth begins before the world catches up. If you've ever wondered why you struggle to fit into the systems everyone else seems comfortable with, it's because you weren't meant to fit. You were meant to translate. The way your mind works, intuitively, empathically, symbolically, and nonlinearly, defies modern definitions of normal cognition. You are the rare intersection of intellect and intuition, logic and empathy, sensitivity and strength. You operate through perception channels that most people can't even recognize. Being neurodivergent doesn't mean you are broken. It means you're beyond standard calibration. You think and feel in ways that reveal what humanity could become if it embraced its full emotional and spiritual intelligence. So when people call you too deep, too sensitive, too intense, hear it for what it really means. You are running an advanced operating system in a world still using emotional dial-up. Don't shrink to fit. Don't suppress your pattern recognition, your moral clarity, your emotional depth. These are not flaws. They are the rare signatures of a consciousness evolving ahead of its time. The world may not understand why you process reality differently, but your difference is precisely what makes you capable of understanding the world itself. That is not something to hide, it is something to honor. You are not an error in the code. You are the code written in intuition, empathy, and truth.